You have to be the best version of yourself. You have to, and especially for a club like Liverpool. My managerial skills, obviously, based on energy, on emotion, on relationships and all these kind of things. My energy level is endless, because it always was, and now it's not.
It was a day Liverpool fans hoped would never come. After 9 years and 8 trophies, including the Champions League and the Reds' first league title in 30 years, Jurgen Klopp was stepping down at Anfield.
This is the best club in the world. It's outstanding. Being an honourable Scouser is probably one of the best things I could have ever achieved in my life. And whatever will happen in the future, I don't know now. But no club, no country for the next year, no other English club ever. I can promise that.
Now Liverpool faced an almost impossible task of replacing such a monumental figure. Who would replace Klopp? After much speculation, it was time to welcome Feyenoord manager Arne Slot. Welcome to From the North. I'm Chris Hall, and in this podcast we're going to reflect on how Liverpool boss Arne Slot took the mantle from the adored Jurgen Klopp and delivered a debut season nobody could have predicted. I'm joined by artist Abigil Rudkin, Steve Hoare from the Redmen TV, and Gareth Roberts from the Late Challenge podcast. We'll delve into the story of how the Reds secured their 20th league title and the first they could celebrate with fans for more than 3 decades. So, Jurgen Klopp drops the bombshell that he's leaving. What did you think?
Devastated, gutted, all those kind of words. I was live. We were actually doing a show previewing the Norwich FA Cup game at the time, and then someone ran into the studio and were like, check your phone. And I thought maybe that'd be like a family emergency or something. I'm thinking, oh my God, one of my kids. And I look at my phone, it was like Jurgen Klopp's leaving, and it was like, couldn't believe it. It was like, yeah, just a complete shock, and then devastation of like, why now? Why is he leaving? But then you see the video and he explains it out, he's done it and he's tired, and you kind of got acceptance. But I think I'd built myself up to the point where I thought it was all him. Like, it wasn't just Liverpool, because Liverpool was a bit of a mess before Jurgen got there. So I put all the success down to just one man. It turns out actually the club, like he said when he left, it'll be better or it'll be as good as whatever. But I just remember being absolutely devastated, thinking, we've had such highs, he's won all these trophies, we're going to just go back to being an all-round kind of team. So, yeah, it was a big shock, and I was completely gutted, to be honest.
And Gareth, I don't know if you remember the old Granada footage of when Bill Shankly left. And Tony Wilson was out on the street exactly, and telling people for the first time. Was it that kind of vibe again? It felt a bit like that, didn't it?
It was like that, yeah. I mean, I was working in, I was doing some work for Edgehill University, and I was sat in their press office, and there wasn't any other real big football fans in the room when it happened. So I was there, and my watch buzzed with the news, breaking news, and my first thought was, the BBC's been hacked, or you know what I mean? Like, I didn't believe the news that came through, and I was immediately online trying to verify it from different sources. And I still sort of was like, I was in like this sort of disbelief about it. I actually messaged someone who worked for the club that I know, just to say, what I typed. It was an abbreviation, and the first letter was W, and the last letter was F, and it was like, why? You know what I mean? I couldn't get my head around it, because it was just from nowhere. There'd been no precursor, there'd been no sort of hint at that this was going to happen. We were doing all right, we were all quite bright about the Reds at that point. And then, I was gutted, and you're right to compare it to Shankly, because I think Jurgen was this generation's Shankly. It was that kind of job he did. He turned the club around. If you think about when he came in, a lot of Reds, certainly my age, were like, if this man can't win the league, no one can. We're not going to see it. I've been going, my first game at Liverpool was the 1990-91 season, so the season after we'd won the league. I've got programmes that say champions, and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't go when we won it in 90. So I went to every season where we didn't win it. And I kind of felt like we were jinxed. Do you know what I mean? Like, even now, we're sitting here and I'm going to get to see Virgil van Dijk holding the Premier League trophy. But I'm sort of checking the skies for asteroids, because, I'm like, until I see it, I haven't seen it, do you know what I mean? And the Jurgen going felt like sort of part of that as well. I mean, obviously we'd won it by then, but we hadn't won it in person. Yeah. And I was like, well, if he's going, as Steve said, it's going to be a backward step. When are we ever going to get back up there again? Are we going to challenge for the league again? Are we going to win it again? Or are we just giving, our competitors a huge advantage by letting go or allowing a man who's been one of the best managers we've ever had to walk out the door? That's how I felt about it.
And Abigil, you got to meet him as well and give him some of your artwork as well. What was he like to deal with just outside of a football sort of setting?
He was absolutely above and beyond all my expectations. Like, he was absolutely unbelievable. I was fully expecting maybe it to be a little interaction where I walked in and I was just like, thank you so much for all you've done for Liverpool. Like, here's artwork that I've done, like, sort of commemorating your time at Liverpool. And then all of a sudden he was just like asking me how long the painting took, saying it nearly brought him to tears, wanting to chat to me about me and my dad going to the football. And then he grabbed me and was like, we need to do a video, come on, like, let's get your artwork out there, let's do a video. And he took my phone and handed it to someone and recorded this video of us together. And I couldn't believe, like, Jurgen Klopp was asking me for a video, but it made him leaving even harder. I don't know whether it was just, it made it a bit more bittersweet maybe, because I had that moment with him to be like, oh, thank you and goodbye. But I also had that thing in my mind of, no, he really is this perfect person that we've all just absolutely adored and, just thought was going to be leading us for until he was 70. I couldn't see a world where Liverpool went on without Jurgen Klopp, so I just had in my mind that everything was just going to fall apart without him, and obviously it hasn't, but I did have that thing in my heart of it. Felt a little bit more painful getting to see him and say goodbye to him in that way, and I was just hoping I'd get to see him again, but
maybe one day.
Maybe
who knows?
one day.
He might come back.
Maybe one day.
Maybe at the parade.
Yeah, exactly. I
I'll
mean,
be
look,
fans of him.
but to go from someone who's so adored and up there on the pedestal, and then you hear that it's going to be Arne Slot who comes in, who relatively unknown to a lot of people. What were your first thoughts when you heard about that?
I didn't know much about him, to be honest with you. The day Jurgen left, again, in the content business, as we all have been at times, it was like, well, who's the next manager? And we were thinking Xabi Alonso. His name was about, and then it was quickly, a week or so later, he's not leaving, it's not going to be him. Ruben Amorim's name was mentioned, who, this hotshot manager who's taken Portugal by storm. Slot's name was never really mentioned until it was nearly done. So he was never on the agenda when we were looking at certain examples and you were speaking to people. His name never really came up. So when it did, and it was very late on, obviously he was having his own season at Feyenoord. He was trying to win trophies there, and obviously Liverpool were in the middle of trying to win their own trophy. So it was kind of kept under wraps a little bit until it wasn't. So yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't know too much about him. I'd heard he'd almost joined Tottenham at one point and then didn't. So I knew he was a good judge of character because he decided not to manage Spurs, which is always a positive. But honestly, it was a bit like, why this guy? It's a bit left field. A guy from Holland. Dutch managers in the Premier League haven't always been successful. Man United had their one, and a couple of times it hadn't worked out. So there was a bit of trepidation, to be honest. It just felt a little bit like Liverpool were trying to think outside the box, because a couple of years ago when it was Jurgen, him and Carlo Ancelotti were available, and they were superstar managers, mega managers. It felt like this was a really bad time to be looking for a manager. The big clubs or the other clubs had managers in place, and everybody was kind of set. There was no one obvious candidates out there. So, yeah, I was surprised that they've decided to go to this fella from Holland who didn't know too much about. And I think it became a fact-finding mission of trying to speak to as many people as you can just to try and find out exactly what he's about, because we didn't really have that much information about him.
When I started my job here, my predecessor didn't do so much as clear out their drawer before they left. And yet Slot's predecessor stood on the pitch and sang his name to ingratiate him with all the fans at Liverpool. How much did that help Arne Slot settle in, do you think?
I didn't think it did at the time. I mean, now, obviously, looking back with hindsight, it seems fantastic that he did it, and obviously Slot did his version back to Klopp, didn't he, which was a good touch. But at the time, like Steve, really, I was quite underwhelmed and almost worried, to be honest, because I just thought, has he got what it takes to step in the shoes of a man who's done what Klopp did at Liverpool? And I was worried that maybe he didn't. And, same thoughts really about, is the Dutch league going to translate to the Premier League? Because a lot of times in terms of players and managers, it hasn't done. And even I remember he recorded sort of like an initial video with the club, which was put out. And I remember even being underwhelmed by that. I thought, after the big personality of Klopp, brilliant with the media, always got a great line for you. I was fortunate enough to be at Jurgen Klopp's very first press conference, and when he dropped the normal one line, you know, it was goosebumps. It was like, this fella's going to win us the league. You just felt it. And then with Slot, I watched that video and I just thought, And I actually remember there was a point in the interview where they said to him, have you got a message for the Liverpool fans? And he sort of said, not really. And I was like, what? And obviously, like, now you know him and you understand them, it makes more sense now. But at the time, because he was still reeling from Klopp going, and this was the man who was going to replace him, I remember then seeing all those predictions we're now laughing at, of everyone saying, you know, you might scrape top 4, you might be outside the top 4. I thought, that's fair enough, that. I thought, I'll take top 4. And I never for a minute thought we were going to see a title challenge, never mind win it. So I don't mind saying that that's what I said at the time, but that's added to the brilliance of actually winning it in this fashion. To come in your first season from a completely different league and just work with all these superstars, improve them and win the league is outstanding.
I think as well, Liverpool for a while were known as like, we make great decisions in the transfer market, managers, but yet the club had gone through so much turmoil. So Michael Edwards had left, and Julian Ward was in charge, and he had left. And then Jörg Schmadtke, who was effectively Jürgen's mate, had come in, and then he was going. And it was like, you know, they'd made some, for a while, first time in a while, some pretty average transfers. You know, they spent a lot of money on players. It wasn't working. They bid massive money for like Moises Caicedo and Lavia, and they made a bit of a fool of in the press, really, where, you know, that was never the case with Liverpool. So I think some of us were almost questioning the decision-making behind the team, because for so long, especially with Jurgen at the helm, it was very stable, and then towards the end it felt a bit rocky. And then when all of a sudden Xabi Alonso effectively said no, and there's talk that maybe Ruben Amorim, yes, we don't know what's happened there. It was like, why are all these people not wanting to manage Liverpool? Is there something that we aren't quite understanding? Why is Jurgen leaving? All of a sudden, the tinfoil hats on, the conspiracy theories going, is there something behind the scenes? Then there's talk that the owners are trying to sell, and all of a sudden it went back to that chaos theory that we spoke about before, of Jurgen had settled everything down, and now he's leaving and it's all a bit messy again. Oh, by the way, you're getting Feyenoord's manager. You know, he hadn't even won, he isn't the top manager in their league, technically. You know, he hadn't won the league that season, he'd won it previously or whatever. So I think a lot of people were questioning, like, who's making decisions? Are they making the best decisions, and why are they getting made?